Today I am here to help you understand C. C is a highly versatile and widely used programming language that is structured, machine independent, and capable of writing various types of applications. It is the foundation of many other programming languages, including Java and C++, and has been used to develop some of the world's most complex software systems, such as Windows and Linux operating systems, Oracle databases, Git, Python interpreters, and more. C is also commonly used in scientific programming and research. Whether you are an experienced programmer or a beginner, learning C can be highly beneficial for your career. C is a technology that helps solve problems in a variety of different ways. In this class, I'll be teaching you the big picture of C, which means we'll be learning about what it is and the different things it can do. This class will help you take your first steps in learning how to use C, and it will be a lot of fun. So get ready to learn and let's get started. I'll be giving you a big picture understanding of C, which is a technology that's been around for almost 50 years now. That's a really long time. While other technologies have changed a lot over the years, C has evolved at a slower pace. So, while we'll still cover the basics and first steps of using C, we'll also take a look at its history and how it's been used over the years. This will give you a better understanding of the context and why C is still important and widely used today. Let's explore together. Today, I want to talk to you about a special language called C. Even though this language has been around for a while, it's still very important today. While the language itself hasn't changed too much over time, the problems that it solves and the role that it plays in our world today are different than they were when it was first created. This is because so much has changed around it and there are new challenges that need to be addressed. To really understand C, you need to have a big picture view of what it can do. This means understanding all the different things that it can be used for, but it's also important to know a little bit about the history of the language and why it was created in the first place. This can help us to better understand how it works and how we can use it to solve problems. So, if you're interested in learning more about C, don't be afraid to ask questions in the comments and explore. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll use this language to solve a big problem yourself. Let's learn about an amazing programming language called C. To fully appreciate why C is still one of the most popular programming languages in the world, it's important to understand what it can do and a little about its background. C was created way back in 1972 by a brilliant programmer named Dennis Ritchie who was working at Bell Labs. It was named C because it was created as the successor to another programming language called B. C is an amazing language because it is used to build so many things that we use every day, like operating systems, databases, and even some video games. It's a language that allows you to build complex things by putting together simple instructions. So if you're interested in becoming a programmer, or if you just want to learn more about how things work, learning C is a great place to start. You'll be able to create all sorts of amazing things. Let's learn more about the programming language C. Originally, C was created to develop programs for the Unix operating system. Unix is the system that runs on many computers and servers all over the world, and it needed a special language to help it work. C was perfect for this because it was powerful and flexible. C was so good, in fact, that the Unix operating system was eventually rewritten in C. This is a big deal because it showed just how powerful C was and how it could be used to build complex systems. In 1978, Dennis Ritchie and Brian Kernighan, who was one of his colleagues at Bell Labs, wrote a book about C called the C Programming Language. This book is still used by programmers today and is considered a classic in the programming world. So, as you can see, C has a rich history and has been used to build some of the most important computer systems in the world. If you're interested in programming, C is definitely a language you should check out. Let's continue learning about the programming language C and its history. In 1978, two programmers, Dennis Ritchie and Brian Kernighan, wrote a book called the C Programming Language. This book became a classic in the programming world and is still used by programmers today. One of the most famous things about this book is that it includes the very first Hello World program. This program is a simple way to introduce a new programming language, and it's often one of the first programs that a new programmer will write. The Hello World program simply prints the message Hello World to the screen, If you're interested in programming, you can still get copies of this book today, and it's a great resource for learning about C. It's amazing to think that the very first Hello World program is in this book. So, if you're ever interested in learning a new programming language, be sure to look for the Hello World program. It's a great way to get started and see what a language can do. Are you ready to learn more about the programming language C and its growth over the year? In the 1970s and 1980s, C became increasingly popular and many different versions of C compilers were created for various computer systems. A compiler is a program that takes the code you write in a programming language and turns it into something the computer can understand and run. In 1989, a version of C was created that was standardized by the American National Standards Institute, and this version became known as ANSI C. This version of C was widely adopted and became a standard for how C should be written and used. The following year, the International Organization for Standardization adopted nearly the same version of C, and it became known as C99. This helped make sure that C was consistent across different systems and could be used by programmers all over the world. So, as you can see, C has grown and evolved over the years, and it has become an important language in the world of programming. If you're interested in learning more about C or programming in general, keep exploring and trying new things. Let's talk about the different versions of the C programming language. You might see the C programming language referred to as C. In 1999, a new version called C99 was released. This version included some new data types, which made it easier to write programs that were more complex. It also introduced single-line comments, which are notes that programmers can leave for themselves or for others who might be reading their code. In 2011, another version called C11 was released. This version added even more new features like support for generic macros and multi-threading. A generic macro is a tool that makes it easier to reuse code, and multi-threading helps programs run faster by allowing different parts of the program to run at the same time. Most recently, in June 2018, a new version called C18 was released. This version made only minor technical corrections to the language. So, the C programming language has evolved over time to become more powerful and more versatile. Programmers use different versions of C to write all sorts of programs, from simple games to complex applications that run on servers. If you're interested in learning more about programming, C is a great language to start with. Let's talk about the versatility of the C programming language. C was originally created to be a general-purpose programming language, meaning it could be used to write all sorts of different programs. Today, you can find C compilers for just about every type of computer or hardware platform you can think of. That means that programmers can use C to write programs that run on everything from smartphones to supercomputers. Even though C is a powerful and versatile language, some programmers feel that it's more like a low-level language than a general-purpose one. What does that mean? Well, a low-level language is one that's closer to the computer's hardware. It gives programmers more control over how their programs work, but it can also be more difficult to use. Some programmers prefer higher-level languages, which are easier to use and more abstracted from the hardware. These languages allow programmers to focus more on solving the problem at hand, rather than worrying about the details of the hardware. However, C remains a popular language because of its power and versatility. It's a great language to learn if you're interested in programming, and it's used to write all sorts of different programs, from games to operating systems to scientific simulations. Let's talk about how programming has evolved over time. Back when C was created, a lot of programming was done using something called assembly code. Assembly code is a type of programming language that's very close to the computer's hardware, and it requires programmers to write very explicit instructions for the computer to follow. For example, if you wanted the computer to add two numbers together, you might have to write several lines of assembly code to make it happen. It was a very tedious process, and mistakes were easy to make. These days, we take it for granted that we can add two numbers together with just one line of code in most modern programming languages. This is because programming has evolved over time, and we now have more high-level languages that are easier to use. However, C is still an important language because it's very powerful and versatile. It allows programmers to have more control over how their programs work, and it's used to write all sorts of different programs, from games to operating systems to scientific simulations. So, while programming has become easier over time, there's still a lot of value in learning a language like C. It can help you understand how computers work at a low level, and it can give you more control over how your programs run. Long time ago, when C was created, many programmers used a language called assembly code. Writing assembly code can be really tedious because you need to write many, very specific instructions to do even simple things like adding two numbers together. Assembly code is considered a low-level language because the instructions in assembly code directly match the instructions the computer's processor can understand. When people use assembly code, they often have to use assemblers to turn the code into machine code, the ones and zeros that computers can understand. But because assembly code is so specific to a particular kind of computer, it can't be easily moved from one computer to another. When computers first started being used, people had to write instructions for them using a language called assembly code. Assembly code was really hard to write because you had to give the computer very specific instructions, one by one, for every little thing you wanted it to do. It was kind of like building a Lego set one brick at a time. And because different types of computers work differently, you had to write different assembly code for each type of computer. But then, a guy named Dennis Ritchie made a new programming language called C. C was a lot easier to write than assembly code because you could give the computer instructions in a way that was more like how people talk. It was like using bigger Lego bricks that could do more things at once. And you could use the same C code on lots of different types of computers, which was a big improvement over having to write new assembly code for each type of computer. So, because C was easier to write and could work on lots of different types of computers, it became very popular and is still used today. When C was created in the 1970s, it was seen as a high-level language because it made programming a lot easier than using assembly code. Assembly code is a type of programming that talks directly to the computer's hardware, and it's really hard and time-consuming to write. C made it much simpler to write programs and made them work on different types of computers. But over time, people created even higher-level programming languages that made it even easier to write programs. These languages had more features that made them easier to use, like built-in functions and simpler syntax. So now, even though C is still a great language for many purposes, it can feel a bit low-level compared to these newer languages. One of the things that made C really special when it was created was that it could help people write computer programs in a way that was easier and faster than before. It was also a language that could be used on many different kinds of computers. This was really cool. As the video is becoming lengthy, let's wrap it up for now. We'll bring you more informative content in our next video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and share this video. Thank you for watching.